An international study has been looking for the parts of Europe most likely to become independent nations. The researchers from Spain, France and the United States used economic and genetic data to find which countries were most stable and those most likely to break up. So, where does Scotland stand? Our science correspondent, Kenneth MacDonald, can reveal all.
This is what Europe looks like, a patchwork of nations. Some are relatively new nations, formed by regions opting for independence. Yet at the same time, many of these same nations have chosen to unite in the EU. Science is trying to explain what's going on. Because this is also what Europe looks like. These formulae are part of a mathematical model of Europe. Its aim to identify which nations are the least stable, where new nations are most likely to be born. It's the result of work in France, the US and here in Madrid.
These are very complex processes that have been studied by political scientists and others. But what we were really trying to do is take this research one step further, try to build a model that allows us to quantify the incentives for regions, for example, to secede or for countries to unite.
To test if their model worked, the researchers put in old data from the former Yugoslavia. The results said Yugoslavia would break up, but there was more.
That's the first result, that the country was unstable. And then the second result is that the model is actually able to predict the sequence of disintegration of Yugoslavia. So we find that the first republic that wants to leave is Slovenia, followed by Croatia. And then one of the republics, Montenegro, we actually find that it never wants to leave the Union.
So using present-day data, what can the model tell us about our likely future? It finds the two areas of Europe most likely to break away are the Basque Country and Scotland. Does that mean Scottish independence is therefore inevitable?
Slovenia was about 3 times richer in terms of income per capita compared to the rest of Yugoslavia, where the difference between Scotland and England is actually much smaller and slightly to the disadvantage of Scotland. Now, on the other hand, if I would compare it to, say, the Basque Country, if you think that the Basque Country is on the verge or is sort of close, is a close candidate of a region that might actually secede, then it turns out that Scotland is not far behind. What that means is that if Scotland were to be just a little bit richer or a little bit bigger, it would actually be enough for them to go independent.
What the numbers do suggest is something that sounds intriguingly like Devo Max.
Scotland would probably gain from some further degree of decentralization without necessarily going completely independent, because the model does not predict that Scotland would gain from separating from the UK.
The approach can be turned around to find which nations might merge. Top of the list of neighbours most likely to, Austria and Switzerland, and somewhat further down the scale of likelihood, wedding bells for the UK.
If Britain were to merge with any other country, and we're not predicting it would, but if it were to merge with any other country of the European Union, the country it is most likely to merge with would actually be France. You know, this a long love-hate relationship, I guess, from many centuries, but that's the country, if they were to merge, that's the country they were most likely to merge with.
The results also suggest a merger between Britain and Germany is possible, although the numbers show that's considerably less likely than Scottish independence. There is, of course, a caveat. These calculations don't pretend to predict the future. For Scotland, that lies not in equations, but in the hearts and minds of her voters.